We're all fathers, whether we want to admit it or not. There are people watching me that are in my neighborhood. They're young boys, and there's other young fathers. They're watching me. And they're watching how I lead, how I live, and how I do day-to-day obstacles that hit me with life. I believe up to 90% of people carry something from their past. And most of that is painful. If you could take away all that pain, there'd be some happy people. Most of men that I know try to start with the perfect life, and they never arrive there. They want the perfect spouse, and they get married, and they realize you're not perfect and your wife's not perfect. They try to find the perfect job. They try to look the perfect look, buy the perfect house, perfect job, car, whatever. You're never going to find perfection outside of Jesus Christ. Men get in ruts, and we don't like to get out of them. And that's where our women are like, our wives are like, just lead us. We'll follow you anywhere.
That's a taste of what's ahead on today's episode, guys. So let's go. This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to The Next Men Up,
part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome in once again to the Next Men Up podcast. So good, as always, to have you along in the journey and back for another episode. You know this, my name is Mark, and I'm excited to bring to you another story today. Today, I get to continue the conversation that we started last week with Shannon Eads. He's a husband and father, been married for 25 years, got a couple of boys. He's out of the Tampa, Florida area. And he's recently started an organization called Ministry for Men. As you heard in the last episode, he's been through, over the last couple of years, a significant amount of adversity in his life. And it was during this season that God unfolded the vision for Shannon to step into. And so in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about one of the ways that that vision is unfolding, and that's this book that he wrote, Winning the Fatherhood Game. And although it's got fatherhood in the title, what Shannon will tell you and told me, and you'll hear it, is that this book is really for any father, any man who wants to up his game when it comes to fathering. In fact, Shannon draws from sports and his background and his interest in sports and presents it in a way that guys can understand the important scores that we need to know in order to be successful as fathers. Well, I could keep going, but I know you would rather hear it from Shannon himself. And so let's get to it. Here's the second half of my conversation with Shannon Eads. Shannon, I'm curious. I always like to explore this question with guests. What impact has your father had on you and the man that you became?
A lot, Mark. So let me describe my dad this way. My dad grew up in a very, very difficult environment. My grandfather, in his later years, accepted Jesus. So there is the pre-Pawpaw and there's the post-Pawpaw after he found Jesus. I only know the post, the man that got saved, quit drinking, quit everything in his life changed. And I see him as a sweet old pawpaw, and I knew that for about 8 years of his life. But I didn't know him before. And my dad and his twin brother and sister said he was rough. But let me tell you what happened to my grandfather. He and his twin brother were abandoned. When I mean the word abandoned, they were literally abandoned on the side of the road. A family picked them up, and they were in that family. Not a lot of that was shared from my grandfather to my dad and his siblings, but we know enough to know it was awful. So my grandfather had nowhere to start. There was no evidence. There was no wonderful life that he experienced. So that fell into my father and my uncle and my aunt's life. My dad lived a rough life. So fast forward to when I was a kid. My father was a coal miner, couldn't read. He can now a little bit, but his education was about to a fifth or sixth grade education. Yes, he graduated, but it was only because he was good at sports. He was wonderful. Should have went and played in college, but he had nobody directing him.
Mm.
So born, raised, and potentially will die within a 3-mile radius of all three of those things, potentially. Everything he taught me was with my hands or my body, because that's what he was taught as a kid. You work in the fields, you work, then you go home and you wake up the next day and you work. So my father thought me too would go to the coal mines or some small business there in town. So when I said I was going off to college, it was weird. I was the first to go. So when he said to me, sure, go, he thought I would make it 2 weeks. That's what he told my mom, not being mean, but no one had ever done this before. He said, we're going to make him stay 2 weeks, get this out of his system. Well, after my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate, my dad knows I made the right decision. So his influence on me was great. Now, was he perfect? Just like me, I'm not perfect. But the way he led me was more from a man teaching a boy how to survive. He taught us everything: how to weld, how to dig ditches, how to build, how to cut firewood, everything that would need, how to change the oil, how to change the tires. He took us to church. We would sit at home. There's a big Bible. Mark, I'm telling you, it's the most precious thing at my parents' house, a big, big, big Bible. And he would have my brother and I to read because he couldn't read. So he told us and shared with us everything possible. But he didn't know how to go the extra mile with discipleship and spiritual maturity because he never experienced that. His father never went to church with him. Never. Christmas for them was just another day. Birthdays, maybe apples, oranges, or a pair of socks. He had a rough life. So some of that went over into our life. My dad was strict on us. I will say that. He knows it. He was too strict on us. But all he did was what was modeled for him. Mm-hmm. Work. Now, if his father had spent time on reading to him, my dad would have read to me. If my grandfather would have taken my dad on mission trips, my dad would have taken me on mission trips. So a lot that he didn't do, I can't be mad at him because he never experienced it. I was just with my dad and mom and my brother last week in Alabama, tried to go deer hunting. It was too hot. So we spent a lot of time talking. And a lot of that came up. He always says, son, I know I was hard on you guys. And we'll relate back to him. Yes, you were. We cut firewood. Chores. It wasn't just go mow the grass. It was from morning.
Work.
To the work. School came second because to him, school came second. Mm-hmm. So church came first. You went to church on Sunday and that was it. You went to church. But there wasn't that spiritual maturity. So with my sons, have I taken them on mission trips? You better believe it. Have I tried to be that discipleship person? You better believe it. So the cycle has ended. It has. Now, have I been work with my boys? No. Would that be a failure? No. I've shown them the importance of working. It's not just with your hands. So for the past 2 years, I had to work with my mind. Nothing I could do with my hands because of the chemo. I barely could even touch something with my hands. Mm-hmm. So I think I explained that, but did he have an impact on my life? You better believe it.
Yeah, man.
Taught me so much.
So let me shift us now more specifically into the book, because that was a part of how you are journeying out, how you're living out this mission, catalyzing some of what's been in your past and turning that into a resource for guys. So the book is called Winning the Fatherhood Game. Who is the book for, Shannon, and how does it help?
Yes. So I put in the book myself that the book is for two people. First, selfishly, it's for my two boys. And I'll explain that in a moment. The second part is it is both for men and fathers. Now, I break that down in the book this way. There are those of us that have the privilege to be called a father because we have biological children or we adopt. For me, I'm both. I have a biological son, and God allowed my wife, Michelle, and I to adopt. Wonderful stories. They're mine. That's my job. No one else's job is to train my two. God's given me that. Now, do I need help? Absolutely. From grandparents to uncles, great Sunday school teachers, other fathers in the community. I need help. Now, that's the first one. Secondly, it is for men and fathers anywhere and everywhere to step up and realize you have the greatest opportunity to impact other young men and young ladies in the world. So some people have called me and said, hey, I want to get this for my son. I'm like, why not for your grandfather or your dad or your husband? Well, our kids are grown. No, you're missing this. In the back of the book, I talk about mentors. We're missing it. A lot of fathers think once their kids turn 18, they get to put their fatherhood responsibility up on the shelf. Absolutely not. That's when they need you the most. When they're 21 and 22 calling you saying, Dad, I've got two jobs here. Which one do I take? It's your job to walk through that with them. And I'm hoping they would call you. If you invested in them, they'll call you.
Yeah.
Most of the times fathers never get a call. They were never there for their kids. But I've got lots of men who never had children. And I want to say to them, you have the greatest potential to impact and mentor other men and fathers. We're all fathers, whether we want to admit it or not. There are people watching me that are in my neighborhood. They're young boys, and there's other young fathers. They're watching me. They're watching how I lead, how I live, and how I do day-to-day obstacles that hit me with life.
So in the book, I know you draw a lot from the game of baseball.
Yes.
Baseball and I had a long life together until into my late teens, early 20s. I'm curious, where does that come from? Like, what part has baseball played in your story?
I still have my 40,000 plus baseball cards in my garage that my wife yearly tries to sell in a yard sale. And I threaten her. I still have all my baseball cards.
Wow.
So I grew up in a very, very rural part of Northwest Alabama. We didn't get to take vacations. We didn't get to travel. So I never got to see the Milwaukee Brewers. I never got to go to Cincinnati and watch the Reds. But as a kid, I got to see basically three teams growing up. The first one was the Atlanta Braves because of Turner Broadcast. And then I got to watch the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Cubs. I felt like I lived in those two cities because I had all the baseball cards. I would lay out the Atlanta Braves cards on the floor and when they were on offense, and I would put the opposing team on the other side. I'd memorize them. I can still tell you today the era cards. I can tell you if you show me a baseball card from like 80 to 90, I can pretty much tell you. Now, I've lost a lot of memory, but at that time I was deadly because I learned cities that way. I learned the Yankees. I learned the Red Sox through baseball. I played it. My dad played it. My brother played it. I love all sports. But baseball was that first thing that just sort of, I learned America through baseball.
You traveled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd say right there in my little living room, a county that had less at that time than 18,000 people in the whole county. But I traveled all of America through baseball. If they played one of those three teams, they had to play one of those three. And then when we got to the World Series, oh man, it was like, whoa, the playoffs. Then it expanded to other teams. So, and I still have some really good cards. I look at them occasionally and just memories come back.
That's so cool, man. And it's interesting to see how the past experiences, how you're wired, your interests, your passions, all of that, right? Like all of who you are coalesces into this moment of Ministry for Men and this book, Winning the Fatherhood Game. And in the book, right, like we've said, you draw from the game of baseball, but with purpose and with a specific intent around identifying these what you call the 5 scores. So there's the past, the present, the potential, the permanent, and the perfect score. Take a few minutes and just unpack what those 5 scores mean, how you define them, how you think about them, and why they're relevant for this audience you're trying to reach.
Mark, I start off with the past score. I believe, I wish I had scientific proof, but I believe this through years of ministering to men and women. I believe up to 90% of people carry something from their past. And most of that is painful. They grew up in a very low economical part of town or the country. They didn't get to experience a lot. They didn't have good parents. What I mean by that, there was someone in the home, but they didn't invest in them. Some kids didn't do good in school. Some got a police record. Others didn't take opportunities that came their way. They were lazy. They didn't study. They were good at sports, but they didn't go the extra mile. And a lot of that pain is carrying forward. It's like compound interest, and they're still living with it today. Mark, I have counseled so many people that most of their problems are from when they were a kid, their youth, and early college. If you could take away all that pain, they'd be some happy people. And so in the book, I try to express to a person, you will never live in the present will of God, in the shadow of God, unless you deal with your past. And most people need to deal with their past, whether it's a parent, someone that abused them, some poor decisions of friends. I've had people call me and say, hey, Shannon, I had to go to my dad's gravesite. I drove up, took the day, walked out, took a chair, and said, Dad, I need to forgive you. You're never in my life, but I think I understand why. Your father was never in your life. You didn't know how to be my father. So I forgive you, and now I'm doing everything I can to be in my children and my children's children's lives. Then you go walk into the present, Mark, which that's where we're at now. You're right there. I'm here. People are listening to this right now. Rick Warren said it best. Why am I here? Let's figure it out so I can have happiness and peace. Folks, we've all got jobs. We've got emergencies. We've got medical issues. We've all right here in the present. But I show them in the book how not to stay in the present, but how to look towards their potential. I believe God has He has potential for everybody out there. Now, there are some people listening. They have great jobs, but God's been after them for years to start a foundation to help homeless kids. There are people that are very successful, that God's encouraging them to do a soup kitchen on Thursday night, and they're scared. They don't have the courage. They're afraid, what will their neighbors think? There are other people that God's been after them for years to foster and adopt, but that would interrupt their success. There are so many potential spots that we could walk into if we only had the courage. So I look at the potential, Mark, in the book as the sweet spot on the bat. When you hit that ball just right on your sweet spot, miracles happen. I had a mom call me the other day. I won't say her name, but her son is in federal prison. She gets to talk to him about an hour a month. So she's bought the book to deal with her past. But when she's done with the book, she's going to walk through the book with her son to help him overcome his past. But it's that potential getting to it. And then there's the permanent score, Mark. Do you know the Lord Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior? Because if we don't, when we leave this world, we'll spend a separation from Jesus. But if we do know Jesus, we will spend an eternity with him. And then there's the perfect score. Now, when people first hear this, they're like, wait a minute, Shannon, nobody can be perfect. Mm-hmm. You're right. Until we walk into heaven. The moment your feet hit the golden streets, you will have a perfect body. Now, you will not be deity. That's God's responsibility. That's his job. But you will have a perfect body. You'll be in a perfect place, and you will never have anything to go wrong in your life. Unfortunately, Mark, most of men that I know try to start with the perfect life, and they never arrive there. They want the perfect spouse, and they get married, and they realize you're not perfect, and your wife's not perfect. They try to find the perfect job. They try to look the perfect look, buy the perfect house, perfect job, car, whatever. You're never going to find perfection outside of Jesus Christ. And then in the last part of the book is a mentoring, strengthening your mentor muscles. And that's where I believe, even though our kids, once they're grown and out of the house, we have so much more to do to help them, but then to go and mentor other men and even mentor people like at a church or a YMCA or whatever neighborhood association you have.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's understandable, it's relatable, and yet it's relevant to where we are. And I like how you presented it. But the question that's surfacing for me is how do you help? How do you advise? How do you suggest guys go back into the past in a healthy way? Because so much of the past keeps us in fear or in doubt, or we're trying to perfect something on our own to make up for something that happened in the past. Like there's lots of ways this plays out. But opening the door to the past not only can be painful, it can be detrimental if you don't go back there with the right mindset or with the right support or in a way that becomes healthy. So how do you, I know this is a long question, how do you help suggest, advise guys open up the door to the past to deal with it in a way that's healthy and beneficial so they can be fully present and lean into the potential that is theirs from Father?
Mark, that's a great question. I wish I could sit down with every man. I'm telling you, for the rest of my life, I'll be 50 next year. So I think I have about 20 years to do this ministry, maybe more. I wish every day someone was calling or emailing that I could do exactly what you're talking about. The first thing I would say to them is, peace will only come through Jesus Christ. You just said it. Think of how many people spend their daily lives trying to heal the past. They think about it. Mark, it's a window right in front of them. Most people, and I'm not going to say everybody, but the majority of the people that I have counseled in my life, pastoral counseling, I'm not a professional licensed counselor. Pastoral counseling is this: they will sit down and you just talk to them, and before you know it, they've opened up. Mm-hmm. The tears start flowing and they share their story. And each time I get to say to them, well, you've got two options here. You can stay in the dugout or you can grab your glove and let's go play ball. For many people, Mark, they won't even leave the parking lot. They're too scared. Yeah. And what I say to them is this: isn't it time we allow fear to be conquered. Most people would rather live in the shadow of fear than the shadow of peace. See, when I was going through the darkest days of my life, I know where I was at. Now, did I venture out sometimes and have an outburst of crying or maybe say something I didn't want to or hit the wall? Sure, Mark. When I got some bad test results and when I went through the severe pain, it was there. But I ran quickly into the shadow, into his protection and said, God, I can't do this. Jesus, I need your help. So to answer your question, I wish I could get those men who are right there on the fence line. And I could say to them, you have two options. You can keep living in misery and never overcoming your past. And you're just day to day, your potential sweet spots in front of you, or take my hand and let's walk in this direction. That's what the last part of the book is all about, Mark, is men finding 4 or 5 good men to men, women to women. I'm very big on that. That's just the way it has to be. You can't have a guy meeting with women after hours. It's just not what we need to do.
Right.
But a man finds 3 or 4 women. A man finds 3 or 4 men and meets with them, and he does life with them. He admits, hey, guys, there's some things I'm really good at, and there's some things I'm not. But together, do life.
So I hear 2 things. Actually, I hear 3 things coming loud and clear. Jesus is a starting point.
Yes.
But after that, it's accepting what has been, accepting the past, accepting the reality. You can't change it. There's the acceptance and the admittance of this is part of my story. And then there's, you don't have to do this alone. Seek some help, find some community among other guys, invite them in to be part of your story and journey forward together. You got there as I was thinking, okay, how would I answer the question? And those were the 2 things that I was thinking about. And sure enough, no surprise, that's ultimately what you said.
Mark, if I could add this to that, I've often been asked, what are men's greatest 2 needs? I think spiritually speaking, there are 2 great needs. The first one is accountability, and the second one is discipleship. I will always believe that until God lays on my heart something different. You could take any man in the world, if he has the right accountability partner, someone that's there listening and guiding him, and he is being discipled with Jesus Christ as the forefront and the core of any curriculum, those men will not be the same in 5 years. It'll change them. That's why most of the world doesn't want the Bible in their country. That's why most people don't want us to say the name Jesus. It's powerful. Just saying the name of Jesus right now, and your listeners hearing that, it brings joy to our heart. But men need more than a sermon on Sunday. They need more than a radio station during the week. They need men calling them monthly as accountability and saying things like this, Mark, I need to know, have you been in the Word this month? Tell me, where have you been? And Mark will say, hey, Shannon, man, I'm sorry, it's just been a mad month. That's okay. That's why we have next month. Let's pick it up. Let's be accountable, and let me bring discipleship into this relationship. I refer to it as spiritual maturity railroad tracks. You can't have accountability without discipleship. But if they're going simultaneously down the railroad tracks to spiritual maturity, you will raise up men like we've never done before. Never.
Guys are familiar with this idea of a lifting partner or a workout buddy, and I think sometimes when we hear the word accountability partner, we go back to that bad experience that we had sitting in someone's home, just sharing all the bad things we've done, or we're intimidated by the idea of being transparent and vulnerable. But what I was thinking as you were talking is, what if we draw from the idea of that workout buddy, or the golf buddy, or the other ways that we've used buddies in our lives to to stay on track with something that we want to do, or to go experience something together? What if we thought about accountability partner or partners or groups in that context, rather than just rather than the negative context that we've either experienced or we've associated with it?
Well, and what you're talking about is the past, Mark. Most of us have seen bad models. We've experienced bad things from churches that meant goodwill, but they just throw you in a room and like, hey, confess all your sins and then love Jesus. And that's not what we're talking here.
Yep.
I wish we had time. I have 8 guys who are sort of in an accountability with me. I started it with them. I just chose these men, and we're sort of doing life together. Now, here's what they'll say to me sometimes. Shannon, why is it easy for you? Why is it easy for you to pray? Why is it easy for you just to call me as a man and say, I'm praying for you today, and listen, I love you in the Lord? How is that easy for you to call me or to encourage us to read our Bible and all that? I'm like, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? It's who I am, and I want to pour that into you, that in 5 years you can say, hey, I'm not going to break away from the group in a bad way. I need to go find 4 or 5 men that I know and pour into them. That's what the second part of the book is all about. Once your kids reach 18, you will always be their father. Go find other people to mentor. And that's, Mark, I'm hearing from women. They're reading the book and like, Shannon, you shouldn't have put winning the fatherhood. You should have put winning the parenthood or whatever. Everything is applicable to them. And I said, you're right. But our churches are flooded with resources for women. There are great people. Beth Moore, Priscilla Shire, Lisa Harper. I could go on and on and on and on. But our churches need men that have resources that have their name on it. And it's like, hey, I'm a man and I want to help you. I don't have all the answers. I'm going to learn more from you. So I wish we had time to bring those 8 guys on, because they would say, he's in our face. He'll just randomly call us and say, hey, man, praying for you. Let's get together. Let's go to Longhorn. Let's go Top Golf, and let's just sit around and talk. They love it. Men love it.
So you mentioned a response from women regarding the book. And you said this earlier when we were talking before the show, and I was curious by it. When you get the feedback from women, what are you hearing them say they want from the man in their life that they're thinking about, whether it's boyfriend or husband or son? What are they wanting out of that man in their life, such that they're calling you and saying, how can we get this to my man, so to speak?
I would characterize it in 2 to 3 things, maybe 2 and 3 we could combine. But let me give you at least 2, and I may mention a third one. The first one is this. It's very simple, Mark. Be a leader. Just lead. Just lead. And what I mean by that is, it's okay to make mistakes. The women will say it. I just want my husband to be the leader and the spiritual person in our home. He doesn't need to know what the difference between Genesis and Leviticus. He doesn't need to be able to cite Psalms 23. I just want him, when we're in the home, to spiritually lead our children. But the problem is, Mark, most of those men never had that in their home. They never saw it. Men are habits of creature. If you were in my hometown today, I probably would take you to a barbecue joint here in Brandon called First Choice Barbecue. I could eat there every day. My wife will go with me once a quarter, maybe. But we're creatures of habit. I love it. I love the same thing. Sort of like to wear the same clothes. I'll put something on. She's like, you wore that 2 weeks ago. It's my favorite shirt. Men get in ruts and we don't like to get out of them. And that's where our women are like, our wives are like, just lead us. We'll follow you anywhere. The second one would be more, when at home, let me say this correctly. When at home, be home. Be here. Be in our lives. A lot of men, I hate the phrase happy hour. I hate the phrase I'm going to meet the guys. When you get off work, you don't need to be happy hour or meet the guys. Go home. Now, if you have recreational things you want to do, and that's a big can of worms, but Mark, our fathers need to be in the home. Go to ball practice, go to dance recital, be in the home. Those are the two things I think I hear more from women saying, I want to read this book. I want my husband to read this book. And I'll ask him, why? Well, he's here, but he's not checked in. He's on the property, but he hasn't checked in. He's checking out too often. And what I want to say to the wives is this: he's never seen a good example. And maybe he has. He doesn't have the courage to step up.
So I never know who these conversations are intended for, but I trust and believe that there is at least one, maybe two, maybe more in the audience for whom these conversations are directly intended. And so I'm putting myself in that person's shoes, that dad, that man, that person that is hearing what you're saying, and it's stirring something in them, even right now. If that person were across the table from you at Longhorn, and you've got the opportunity to do life with that person for just a moment, what are you telling that guy as like the big important takeaway for him?
Wow, Mark, I would look at him and say, the best is yet to come. Your sweet spot, your potentials are right there in front of us. I would look at him or her and I would say this: what have you always wanted to do, but you've never had the courage to do? How can I help you to get there? I may not have the funding to support it. I may not have the experience to equip you, but I will be your biggest cheerleader. I will not only scream and yell and just walk beside you, I'll hold your hand. We can do this. Now, it's impossible for me to hold hands with everybody. It's impossible for me to do everything for everybody. That's why the people that are listening that had a good past, they're working through their present. They know the Lord as their Lord and Savior. We need to help other people in their sweet spot, their potentials. Mark, if you were sitting across from me, the first thing I would say to you is, there's time. No matter, Mark, what's happened in the past, God has us sitting here right now. Let's do this together. And I would share with them, I'm witness. It's possible. God has not only protected me, but he has me in his shadow. So I would encourage the fathers to say this: it's not too late. I know I've said that a couple of times. It's not too late. Where do you want to start? And I would tell them, don't try to fix the world. Let's start with the people God's given you. Your spouse, which is your wife, and your kids. Start there. Your biggest thing may be to go home, grab your wife, kiss her, and say, I've not been doing what I need to do. I'm going to step my game up. After she passes out, falls on the floor, you're going to have to pick her up then and say it to her again and say, I need to pick my game up. She'll probably cry, pass out again, and then just repeat that until it really sinks in. But I would say to the men, secondly, right there, I would look at them and say, just because we're starting today doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes tomorrow. I would go ahead and say, if you're looking for perfection, read chapter 5 first. Just go ahead and get it out of your system. You will not be perfect. And I would just echo that to them. You're not going to be perfect. But what we're going to do, we're going to take baby steps. I love the movie What About Bob? Baby steps. Baby steps. That's probably where I would end the conversation. As the gentleman or lady walked away from me, I would say this: don't jump. Don't run. Baby steps. Because most men who get a little bit of spiritual excitement We call those sometimes camp meetings, revivals, youth camps, promise keepers. You go to a big event and you get really, really excited. Then you come home and you don't have two things, accountability and discipleship, and the flame just goes away. So don't go jump off a bridge. Don't go sell all your possessions and say, we're moving to Africa to be missionaries. That's not what he's asking you to do. Baby steps. Start with your kids, your wives, and then in the back of the book, I say things like this: ask God for accountability partners. You're not going to find accountability partners in a bar on Friday night at 10:30. You're not. That's not the people that are going to make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to be around other people who smell and act like Jesus. That's what I'd say to them. Baby steps, and the best is yet to come.
Guys, the ministry is called Ministry for Men. The website is ministryformen.com. The book is called Winning the Fatherhood Game, and the man is named Shannon Eads. Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your story, for giving us your time, for the courage to step out and accept the call that God has placed before you, and to continue to lean in through the adversity, through the mistakes, through the left foot, right foot, finding your way and trusting that you are leaning into the potential, and that you have checked the appropriate boxes, or will when the time comes, on these 5 important scores. Thank you for being here.
Can I say one last thing?
Please.
If there are a group of men who want to go through the book, and it doesn't matter where, I would love to Zoom in with them. I will try my best. Now, I'm putting this out there. I will do what I can. But if there is a group of men willing to do the book in a small group setting, early in the morning, afternoons, I would like to Zoom in on their first session. If they're too afraid to do the first session, I'll do the first session with them. Now, we just have to work it out by a calendar, but I've made that commitment on a couple of podcasts. So if you're listening and you want to do this book with your sons, your neighbors, you're scared to get it started, on my website, ministryformen.com, I put my email and my personal cell. That is my cell. Pull my cell off, call me, text me, and say, Shannon, in the month of March, we're going to start this book. I will be willing by phone or Zoom to do the first session with you.
Guys, there's the invite. And for that person who needs to take the initiative to get something started for yourself and for the guys around you, may you find the courage. May Father give you the infusion of courage that you need to take that first step, and to reach out to Shannon. By the way, he will answer his phone. I know. I called him in the middle of the woods on a 4-wheeler at the beginning of his hunting trip, and he answered the phone. So that commitment and that promise is real. It just needs somebody to take him up on that offer. Shannon, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. And man, I wish you all the best.
God bless. Thank you, Mark.
Well, guys, I don't know how Shannon's story landed with you. Maybe it is similar to your own story, or maybe there are similar aspects. Maybe Shannon's story looks nothing like yours, and you simply had an opportunity to get a glimpse into someone else's life. I don't know your story, and I don't know how Shannon's story resonated with you. But I would challenge you with this as we bring this to a close. So what? What's next? You just listened to one man's story, and I'm sure you have ideas and thoughts, but what do you do with those ideas or thoughts to put them into action? How can you, as a man, as a husband, as a father, be more healthy and be more godly, so that you can continue to raise the next generation, to raise your sons to become healthy and godly men themselves? That's the challenge before us today. as we bring this episode to a close. As always, guys, thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for journeying with us. If there's somebody that you know that would benefit from listening to Shannon's story, please share this episode with them. Also, if what Shannon had to say, the work that he's doing has really captured you, you can check him out at ministryformen.com. And of course, you can acquire his book, Winning the Fatherhood Game. It's on Amazon, it's on his website, and I'll make sure the show notes has a link to that as well. All right, guys. Well, as I said, thank you for being a part of this community, for being with us for another episode, and we will be back once again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. You know the drill. Until then, guys, adios. Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.